Have you ever wondered how long it takes to install Genera on your computer system? Well, today we're going to show you exactly how long it takes and what it takes to make that happen, all on Genera Gems. Welcome everyone to another edition of Genera Gems. Today we're going to cover how to install Genera, and from a basic standpoint, how that actually looks and what it takes to actually accomplish. So Igor's going to walk us through this step, and Igor, kind of give a little highlight of what you're going to show before we get started.
Yep, so today we're going to show how to, as Jeff said, getting started with Genera, all the way from getting the folder that we've shared with you to getting it up and running. And so I'll just get straight into it.
From an install perspective, yeah.
From an install perspective, yes.
Okay.
So this is typical of what we'll send you if you ask for either a temporary license or a permanent license from us, where you'll have your root folder, which is your Genera 7 resources. And if we go into this, one of the first files you'll see is our setup executable. So this is something you just need to double click to run. If you need any admin privileges or anything along those lines, then you'll have to work with your IT department to get this up and running. But this is a crucial first step of getting Genera set up. And then you're going to get walked through some windows here, typical with setting up other software. We go next, we have licensing agreement, so you can read through this on what is the license agreement when downloading Genera or installing Genera.
Which we know everybody reads, right? End user license agreements.
Everybody. Exactly. Here tells you the version. So in this case, I am installing Genera 7.1.3. Next, the root directory of where Genera gets installed. So the default directory will always be the C drive, ReadySoft, and Genera. We highly recommend you keep it to the default folder. We go next. So here you could apply a patch to your Genera install. So if you have a backup that you want to apply the patch here, you could do that. Or you could wait till after the install to apply that patch. It's totally optional. So in this case, I do not want to apply a backup, so I'm just going to install it.
Now, what we're walking through here, folks, is the absolute clean install. There's no devices coming in at this point. It's just installing the core functionality of Genera, and that will put you in a sort of a clean sheet of paper, if you will, using a little metaphor there. And you'll see what happens right here after the install is finished. So you can see it doesn't take long for this stuff to actually happen. Just loading up and extracting a lot of files for the core functionality of Genera.
Yep, and you can also see details on what's happening with install.
Yes.
And now it's completed. So whenever it changes to the completed status, when we click next and finish, now I have a Genera shortcut icon on my desktop. When I double click that,
let's see your desktop. We don't see that.
This will pop up. There we go. And yeah, so we're at the point.
Oh, yeah, this is where you need to make a decision. Now, if you've purchased a permanent license, you're going to need to provide an activation code, which you can get from this dialog screen. So if Igor were to hit register, what you'll see here is the actual unique ID that we've built from your computer. So this is unique to your PC or any PC because this is a client install. It's only unique to that PC. So this license can't transfer. So we just copy that, and you can use the little copy and paste button on the side there on the right, and then put that in an email, provide we should know, but if as a backup, provide us the Redisoft Genera edition. It's either standard pro or light, one of those types. And then the connections, how many devices have you purchased in your PO? Provide that information as well. And then we'll issue a new license or the first license in a permanent fashion. So once that is installed, you won't see this dialog box again. So the other way to do this is if it's just sort of a trial, let's test these things out, you can establish a temporary license. Now, there's a couple of caveats with the temporary license. We can issue them for 30 days or longer if need be, but typically it's a 30-day license. And depending on where you install it, if it's on your laptop and it's part of the internal company intranet and does allow external access, you shouldn't have a problem because our server, our temporary license actually communicates with a public server to check date and time. So we're not counting on the date time stamp of the client computer. We're looking at a server which is constant, and that server will continue to tick off time. So it's important to install a temporary license right away so you can maximize your amount of time. If you wait 15 days on a 30-day temporary, you've lost 15 days on that license. So if you get that installed, you can work with Genera right away. So it's important to keep that in mind.
So in this case, I'm going to install a temporary license. So when I click browse, we're going to browse to this. So we have a license folder here. I'm just going to go right to that. As you can see, we have licenses. And then this is the format of how a license will typically be given. So it'll say what edition it is. So this is a pro license that is temporary, that has 10 connections and 10 live connections, and the expiration date. So this will expire February 15th, 2026. So if I was to click open, so it'll say license is valid. If it is invalid for whatever reason, it'll not be able to validate that license. And then if I click install, you see that the new license is installed and the new license will take effect when Genera restarts. So I'm going to exit here. I'm going to start up Genera again.
So relatively speaking, Igor, it is just that easy to get the software installed and get license. Obviously, there's some communication happening, correspondence back and forth between support at Redisoft and the customer, but you should be able to get this up and running pretty quickly.
Yep, and that's what we did on purpose. We didn't want to complicate things on the setup side. Here it is. So I get this dialog box here that says, since it's a temporary license, it's going to remind me of how many days I have until my expiration date. So this will expire in 29 days. When I click OK, drag in my Genera, and here is a fresh install of what Genera would look like.
Yes. And it'll always take you to the scheduler view. As you can see, I mentioned it earlier, clean sheet of paper. You have nothing on here, but you have the dialog boxes. And we always call this our scheduler view, which is its proper name, or our dashboard view. If you had things in here, you would see what's going on. But again, clean sheet of paper to work with.
And one last thing I want to cover for this fresh install is how to get your instruments into Genera. So as we can see here, if I click on the Instruments tab, we have nothing uploaded at this point. And so in order to put your instruments in, we're going to go to the Tools section. And here we could see our Manage Packages is where it goes by default. And we're going to install/update. And we're going to click on this folder icon to browse to our package folder, which will be inside the Genera 7 resources. So if we go there, again, So instead of going to licenses, we're going to go to packages. And here is what we'll include package files. This is what we call them, GPK files, of the instruments that you provide us.
Yeah, these are the actual drivers that we have written against vendor API. So these would be the packages that you install to get the instruments that are needed based on the system that you've purchased or have.
And we could also drag them all in, so we don't have to select them one at a time. We could select them all, click open. Might take a little bit longer since we're selecting multiple of them. Click next. It's going to extract all the information from those GPK files for the different instruments, because one package file can have multiple instruments associated to it. And you click install. And when that's finished, we can see now we have all of our packages loaded up here. And if we go under, an important note here is the versions as well. So you can see the versions of the different packages. And so if, something errors out on a certain instrument, it's always good to make sure that you're using the most up-to-date driver, because things may change for the API of the instrument, and we may have already fixed that issue in future versions of the instrument.
So why don't you give us, Igor, why don't you give us a Brooks TCP command server robot, PF400?
Yep. So as you can see, we have the Brooks TCP command server package. And after installing that package, we can go to manage instruments. And as you can see, there's no content yet. If we click on this add button, a dialog box will pop up, and we just have to select the vendor. So in this case, we're going to select Brooks and the model. So we're going to have the PF400, the name. So we could customize this name. I'm just going to leave it as default, and we could have multiple of the same instrument. So when we add a second PF400, it'll have a 2 instead of a 1. And then any of the settings for connectivity issues and any parameters for the instrument itself. So in this case, we have to specify the host name, the port, whether it's on a rail or not. So in this case, I'll just set it to false. Disable high power on uninitialize, and plate detection. So what kind of plate detection do we want? And these could be configured after adding it in, and I'll show that after I'm done adding it.
That's a great point. I was thinking about that too. It's like, is this the only place I can do this? Nope. Which it's not.
So we can see that the PF400 is in, and if we go over here, expand this control panel, drag this in, and if I was to click on here, go to settings, we can see that the same settings are here.
Yeah, and most of the time, in fact, all the time, you're going to control your devices information through here if you haven't set them up initially. So like Igor went through on that installation for the actual instrument itself, he didn't necessarily set them up there, but he knows full well that he can go back into the instrument control panel and take care of it there, which is, like I said, most of the time where you're going to be doing some configuration, adjustments, instrument property settings, those types of things, because you may not know what they are at the time of manage instrument installation.
And as we can see here, we have all the vendors for the different packages, and so you could fully self-configure your system as you see fit. So you could add instruments, you could even remove instruments as well. So if I was to click on here and click remove, well, I added this citation, so I could remove that from my system, and now it's gone. So this allows, we give some power to the user to self-configure their system.
Also, one other important thing to remember is based on the number of device connections that have been purchased will determine how many instruments you can have in this list. If it goes over, let's say you have, in this case, Igor did have 10 connections, and it says so on the information tab on the About box, and it says 10 connections. Okay, but if you go to 11, it's going to say, no, I can only do 10. You'll have to remove something. So maybe there's some configurations with the power of managing packages and instruments. You want to modify it a little bit. You'll have to make sure that you remove something if you're going to add something. You can still use, if you have the package, you can still manage that and use a different device in place of something that you don't want to use. So you're just swapping one for the other. You just need the package for that new instrument you're going to bring into the system, but you can only have a top end of 10 in this case.
Yep, and I think that's all we want to cover in this video here.
Yeah, yeah. So what you have there is, like we just demonstrated, how you take Genera from not installed on the PC to getting it installed, installing driver packages, and managing those instruments that come from those packages to get you started on your path towards Genera installation and Genera usage. That'll do it for this episode of Genera Gems, and we'll see you on the next one.